Before we get started, I'm extremely proud to say that this episode of The Petrified Comedian was brought to you by 4x3. 4x3 is an independent media company creating comedy content on YouTube. This week, they dropped an episode of their podcast on a related note with the hilarious up-and-comer Shade Arena. Support independent comedy at youtube.com/@FOU/RXTHREE or by looking up 4x3 on YouTube. Please enjoy the show. Chris Siemer is a fellow burly bearded man who, also like me, loves musicals and grew up singing in choir. His comedy combines the hard living of youth with modern sensibilities of age. You can check out his stand-up on YouTube or see him as a regular at Dead Low Brewing or Go Bananas Comedy Club. Or if you're lucky, you can catch him on tour with Don't Tell Comedy. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
So, just to start out, I ask every comedian this. If you could describe your comedy in 3 words, what would they be?
Dirty and fun.
Dirty and fun. Excellent. Yeah. I just finished listening to one of your most recent recordings online. It was pretty similar to some of the bits you did at the Don't Tell Comedy show that I got to see. I actually saw you open for Ian Lara in Columbus.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. I had a note written in my phone that just says, OSHA, hilarious. Chris Siemer, hilarious. And then,
love it.
So yeah, here we are.
I'll take that.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about being in show choir.
Show choir. Well, I wasn't really in a show choir per se. Like, we didn't do acts or anything like that, or hand motions necessarily. I was in like a chamber choir, chorale choir. I was in high school choir, and I was also in the I was in the All Ohio State Fair Youth Choir for 2 years. I know you're jealous as hell right now.
Well, I was about to say, if I had stuck with mine long enough, there is a weird. There could have been some competition there between us. I was actually in the Cincinnati Boys Choir, which is another traveling competition choir.
Yeah, very aware of them.
Oh yeah, that was not fun. I was actually my year there was the first year that they started letting kids go to the bathroom, and it was because of this kid who was like, if you don't let me go, I'm just going to pee my pants right here, right now. And
yeah, that's always good.
He did it for every day for a week, and made some real change.
That's a martyr right there.
So, is comedy your main job?
It's the one I love the most, I'd say, but no, I still have a day job as well.
Okay. So what do you do?
I work in IT for a bank.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a similarly vague nothing job. I work in marketing for a solar energy company. So it's,
man.
What does that mean? It means I sit behind a desk.
That's right. Yeah, I'm able to, luckily I get to work from home, so that affords me a little more freedom to go out and do shows and things like that if I need to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Do your coworkers know you do stand-up?
Yeah. Some have seen it. Not all.
That's awesome.
Most haven't.
Yeah, I get that. OSHA was the same way. She only had one coworker who she's let come out to a show. Has your stand-up ever gotten you in trouble, or do you ever feel like it could get you in trouble at work?
It hasn't. Could it? I guess. I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't talk about anything work that's related to my job. I'm certainly crass on stage and vulgar, but you can't just see a fucking comedy show. What are you complaining now all of a sudden that people are speaking like adults? You know what I mean? If someone's gonna fire me for something like that, then I don't think we need to be in business together anymore.
Absolutely. That's similar to what OSHA said. She was like, if I get in trouble at work, I hope it's at the point where I can just say goodbye to that job.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I don't say anything that's going to offend groups of people because of any of the hot button issues. If I offend people, it's because they're tight asses and they can't handle a little vulgarity.
Yeah, I actually, speaking of that, it reminds me of how you started off the Radio Artifact show, which you were like, "All right, I'll start with one wholesome joke," and I'm not going to ruin the punchline for that joke. But what I loved about that was it just is like it's a way to start the show off by saying like, "This is as clean as it's going to get for the rest of the show. Strap in."
Yeah, yeah, and I don't even know what clip you saw. I don't even know what's available of me out there. That's how good I am at the marketing piece of this job that we do. I don't take care of that part of it enough, unfortunately.
It's I've really seen a wide variety. I've talked to comedians where everyone from people whose like siblings manage their social media to someone whose like mom was doing it for them. A
Yeah.
lot of comedians don't seem to like want to manage their social media.
No, a lot of comedians don't want to do much of anything, really. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of people get into stand-up comedy, because a lot of them are too lazy to do other jobs. I'm no different. I don't want to do anything else. All I want to do is sit around and make funnies, man.
Goofs and gaffs.
Yeah, man. I already got a job there that I was making some money at, and I like nice things. So
Absolutely. Don't have to live the poor comedian lifestyle while being an up and comer.
yeah, I mean, yeah. There's a school of thought that says if you're struggling, you're probably staying funnier, but I don't know. I don't like being hungry.
Yeah, I understand that. Um, there was a comedian who said his therapist told him specifically, "You could do comedy for a living, but I think you need to give yourself no other choice."
It's kind of like that. You do kind of have to be singularly focused with it. Um, and yeah, a lot of that time that comes from being backed into a damn corner. Um, yeah, I mean, who's ever to say what works for anybody? Everybody's path is their own path, I would say, but that's kind of true. I mean, if you really, it's just like anything, though. If you really want to be excellent, and I mean top tier, no matter what it is. I mean, be it stand up comedy or a gymnast or a damn plumber, if you want to be the absolute best, it takes a lot of dedication to the time. And I mean, what's that whole professional thing? Is what 10,000 hours or whatever? I mean, I'm certainly past 10,000 hours, I would say, put into it, but things are going to struggle. Other things are going to struggle. I mean, but you got to be singularly focused. And comedy is, I mean, that's one that takes so much of you, of yourself and your view on the world. So you've got to constantly be living and recording and all of that shit. But it's like I said, it's like anything else. It's something you got to do a lot of, and there's no shortcuts in stand-up comedy. I mean, there's not. There's people that will get to wherever you're trying to get to maybe before you, but they're the exception, not the rule. There are no shortcuts to this. So, I mean, certainly you can see people that strike something big with a 2-minute clip online. I mean, I hope you got the time to back that up. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't have a fantastic 2-minute clip that is good for everybody and everybody's gonna love it. But like, I mean, is it all you got? Because if you're gonna headline a club, you're gonna need 45 minutes to an hour at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard this saying a lot in comedy that it takes 10 years to have any idea what you're doing. Do you agree with that at all?
Yeah, I guess I do. But there's also other things that come with that too. For the first 10 years, you have a naivete that'll keep you thrusting forward, believing in your heart of hearts that you're the shit and you're the voice America needs. And then after 10 years and you're doing this, it's like, maybe I don't know shit. Maybe I don't know anything at all, and I've just been you know blindly going along thinking that I know everything. It's Yeah, I mean, you certainly need you to find your voice, and that takes time. I mean, it seems like 10 years is kind of about that benchmark. For anything too, though, whatever you're doing, if you're proficient, I mean, really proficient in all the situations, it takes time doing it. But yeah, 10 years does seem to be about that benchmark. I'm at 11 right now myself.
Nice. Okay. I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
Um, so going back to the Don't Tell Comedy show where I got to
Mhm.
see you, do you remember the main heckler from that night?
Well, what I recall is it wasn't really a heckler, rather just a couple of guys who had too much to drink, maybe not even too much to drink, but the fact what it was is that they were all, it was a group of people that were going out for somebody's birthday. So that's their night. In their mind, in their psyche, that's their night. And one piece of what they're doing is they're going to go to a comedy show. They're going to be drunk doing it. You see that a lot. The big complaint in comedy clubs is like bachelorette parties or something like that. But it's the same mentality. We are all going out, and this is our night to go do this, and everybody else be damned, right? Well, I mean, so that's all great. That's all great and good, but you forget how to act in public a lot of times in that case. So I don't remember exactly who the person was. I know they were dressing. They were dressed wearing something kind of loud, maybe a surf style outfit, as I recall.
So I was actually in the way back of that, but from my perspective, it was just this purple top hat causing havoc. He was wearing like a purple sweatsuit or something like that.
Yeah, it was something loud colored. I know that. But he wasn't really heckling as much as he was just like talking back. I mean, yeah, he
Participating.
had a problem. He was participating.
OSHA said that's where she feels like most heckling comes from. Like, of course, there is the drunk guy who's just belligerent in the crowd, but a lot of heckling comes from the person who thinks they're the funny guy who's going to help you out with your show.
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
I think there's an extent that people don't really understand how rehearsed and planned out comedy is. So interacting like that is just it's a complete roadblock.
Right. So in your mind, if you're to stand up, I mean, you got. I don't want to say a script necessarily, but it certainly is close to a script. You've got your main points and then your connective tissues. There are filigree you put in between them, but it is a script to some degree, and you have to hit what you're saying in a certain rhythm and a certain punch and a certain timing for that punchline to make sense. And if it gets you off that rock, it's not going to work. Or what sometimes happens, people will shout out your punchline just before you get there. It's like, you evil some bitch. They don't know. They don't mean anything by that, but damn.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of going back to like how much of a script it is, I heard you in that radio artifact show mention, like you just said under your breath at one point, okay, I think I'll do this one. How much do you cater your shows to the audience?
Cater, I wouldn't say at all. I mean, I know certain things I don't want to say to some groups, or like I said, I'm fairly dirty up there. I talk about sex in a very frank way quite often, and it can be a bit much for folks. So, I've got to kind of testing to see how if they're able to go there. You know what I mean? If they're able to together and laugh about it, if they're gonna be, like I said, tight asses or something like that. Um, but also, it's just you've got a million things in your head, and it's just like, okay, I think this one will go good right here, right now, in this moment. We're talking about this kind of vibe is what's going on, that kind of thing. So typically you got a bit of a plan, but certainly if something comes up, you got a joke about it. Hoorah! Jump in.
I think it's an incredibly admirable thing that some people can walk into a room and just completely improvise a show or
Hmm. Yeah,
spend more than half the time doing crowd work or something like that.
yeah. I have. I've not really. I've not worked that muscle out nearly like I should have. I don't really do crowd work. I mean, if something happens, I'll try and address it as much as I can. But I don't just walk in and start talking to the audience and go from there. I it's just like it's not a muscle that I've exercised at all, so it's not a muscle that would be strong. And I've always said if you're going to engage with a heckler, you better have a killer comeback. You know what I'm saying? Or just don't get engaged at all. Because if you don't plant them in the ground, you lose.
Do you have an experience where you ever felt like you lost to a heckler?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, not in that sense. I've been fortunate. I haven't had a whole lot of that. I haven't had to deal with a whole lot of that. But like, thankfully, knock on wood. Um, I've certainly got poor reaction from the audience. Um, often if that's the case, usually they're just quiet. One time I did get booed off stage. It's only happened once.
That's good. In 11 years, that's a good track record.
Yeah, yeah, and it was at well, what is now the Heritage Bank Arena down here in Cincinnati. I was opening for Cat Williams, and there's
Amazing.
yeah, there's something like 5 to 7 thousand people there, or something.
So I've heard that that was kind of your worst show ever.
Yeah, yeah, that one follows you. No one really knows about it. It's not like if that happened today, I'd probably be done with stand up because the ego would be so bruised.
How early on was that?
I was only a couple of years in. It was 2014, I believe. I want to say like October 2014 or something like that, maybe August, somewhere in that later half of the year. But yeah, just a couple of years after I started doing stand up.
That's awesome. So, how do you find yourself opening for someone like Cat Williams?
I don't I don't know honestly, man. Just the same way as I don't know how if I knew how to if I knew how to do that, I'd do it more. You know what I mean? It was just as random as a thing could be, really. Um, I think that he'd asked for a woman and a white guy for that show, and they got a woman, and she knew me from doing shows together, so she got me for it. But it was way too early for me to be in that position. Um, so I had friends in the audience. It did not go well. You know, and I don't. Maybe it wouldn't even go well today. If that audience wants to boo someone, I'm certainly the guy they're going to boo. But I was in no way at skill level where I should have been to get that kind of show. No way. I mean, that was U.S. Bank Arena. You know who else that performs there? Who else I see? I've seen Hulk Hogan wrestle there. I've seen great Grave Digger has been there, and now Chris Siemer. Fantastic.
I believe I've been to at least two monster truck rallies in that very arena, uh,
Yes.
and maybe a Red Hot Chili Pepper show or two.
There you go. See.
So Red Hot Chili Peppers, monster trucks, and Chris Siemer.
That's right, man. Well, I've got my place.
So I listen to like a lot of different comedians podcasts, and speaking of Cat Williams, John Mulaney and Mike Birbiglia were talking about like he had a set recently that it's a special that opens in with like 30 minutes of regional humor about Jacksonville, and it's to the point where like they were both talking about how like 15 minutes and then in they're like, holy shit, is he still talking about Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Is there a comedian for you that kind of puts you in awe like that? They're just able to go and tackle any crowd.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's for someone who's been doing it 11 years, that gets to be somewhat of a loaded question because you know some of these people personally. Um, I think someone like that for me is probably Chad Daniels. Chad Daniels is top level, um, and he can handle anything in the crowd, and he can be in the moment, and but he controls that stage. It's his area up there, but he's very fun to watch. Um, a lot of it has like a personal nature to it, so you feel like you're getting to know him to some degree. So Chad always for me, and Sean Patton as well. is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, Sean as well is like he had a bit about people who say Nolans for New Orleans, and because he's from down there, and he just and it really grinds him up. And I tell you, finally at the end, it's like I forgot that's what we were even here doing, because it goes and it goes and it's just bang bang bang, and yeah. But if I mean people always ask, who's your favorite comic, and I mean, they're just consumers for the most part. So typically they're gonna say like a Tom Segura, Burt Kreischer, and those guys are great. And Tom's one of those for me too. I can always watch Tom. But man, Chad and Sean, like having that mystique of knowing them personally too as well. It's like, man, they're so nice. They're so good guys too. It's like I just want to see them work and work and work. They're fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Changing gears a little bit here, we have to talk about skydiving because your skydiving experience sounds eerily similar to mine to the point where I think we might have gone at the same place.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, you live in like the center of Ohio, right? I mean, we probably did go to the same place. I think it was called Start Skydiving.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine was called Air Ohio.
Oh, well, I think the experience it seems to be fairly common for anyone who's done it. I don't think I'll do it again if I'm frank. You know, it was fine. I mean, right afterwards, I was like, oh, that was cool, and the fact that I'm glad I just did that, meaning I'm done with that. That feeling was good. I don't know that I want to go through the feeling to get there again because that sucked.
Oh my gosh. So, speaking of that, we planned ours out like 2 months ahead of time. I just try not to think about it. It gets to be a week ahead of the date. And I'm like, well, first of all, I was taking my best friend and his fiance. So I was like, if they die, that's like $60,000 down the drain right there. They've got, they've got a whole wedding planned right now.
Right.
So I actually got so nervous that I made videos for people. Like, if I die, like, here's what I want to say to you. And then we get to the day and they postpone it. And there's bad weather. So I like have this feeling and it just didn't go away for like the next month. And I'm like, I could die doing this. They make you watch this insane video of the guy who invented the tandem parachute, like in the beginning.
See, they didn't show us any damn video.
Well, once we got there, they didn't show us any instructional videos, which I thought was insane.
Oh yeah,
But
so okay,
this was like a waiver video where he was
right.
just like on a 15-minute tirade about how you might die.
You're right. I did watch that. You're right, but nothing when you actually get there to do the damn jump.
So we get there and they just talk to us about it. They strap us in while they're talking to us, and then they leave for like an hour and a half, and you're just supposed to memorize that. And just like you said your guy like was nowhere to be found.
Oh
My
yeah.
guy was literally recovering from a crash. So
Oh
he
god.
not like a plane crash, but just like you said, you have to pick your feet up when you're landing.
Yeah, of
Well,
course.
what happens if you put your feet down is you tilt. And what ends up happening is you ride on your face instead of your butt.
Right.
Um, so this guy is like getting up disheveled and he just like rushes over to get on the plane to go back up and do it again
Oh, it happened right then. Christ.
in that moment. And so he's joking about it. By the way, this person's name is almost as good as Pecan Pie. He went by Blink 182. Um, Another detail about this is I'm 6'3", and there's a weight limit with parachutes. So the bigger you are, the smaller your guide is. So this guy is about 5'7", and he's like running up to me and just like strapping me in. We get on the plane, and the whole
Yeah.
way down, he's going, just remember your technique for landing. I really don't want to crash twice in a row. They're all going to make fun of me if we
Yeah.
crash twice in a row.
Yeah. Fucking A, man. And I'll be sad too because you'll crash with me.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing is like when when you slide like that, he was taller than his person, which is the only reason that he got hurt. But I was way taller than him, so he would have basically ridden me like a sled on the ground
Oh,
if I
perfect.
crashed.
Of course, of course.
All right. So speaking of intense experiences, you were maced. Was that your worst first date ever?
Worst first date. I I don't know. There's been some zeros, that's for sure. That was definitely the most painful physically to speak of. Yeah, absolutely.
I personally had one of my like first real dates ever when I was 16. Took a girl out, and she was like, "Hey, can I drive your car? Like just around the block?" And we were like in a parking lot, and I said sure, and she tried to drive it into a wall. And like really just like wanted to do some damage to my car. So I grabbed the handbrake. Luckily, it wasn't like
Wait,
a stomp
she
one.
was just trying to drive it into a wall on purpose?
She wanted to crash my damn car.
Oh
That was
man.
my personal first like worst first date. But
Yeah. That's
and
the
then I had to
worst.
drive her home.
Oh, I don't think I would have done that actually. I think I'd have just kicked right out. Figure it out for yourself there, sweetness.
Yeah, it was at the very least the last date.
Right.
Okay, so as a fellow bearded man, what is the weirdest thing a stranger has done to your beard?
Um Smelled it probably.
Okay, that's
I mean,
yeah.
I don't really, I'm not, you know, I don't really like anybody like doing anything to it. It's on my face. You know what I mean? I don't I don't like my face being touched. I think that's fair.
I would say my weirdest is I used to work with kids at the zoo, and like during recess, they would literally try to hang from my beard because it was so long. They would
Oh yeah.
like run up out of nowhere, grab two handfuls, and then pick their
Oh yeah.
feet up off the ground.
Yeah, you got to punch those kids. This won't stand.
Yeah. So, do you recall a weekend during which you peed in the middle of the street with fellow comedian Chris Weir?
Oh, that's happened a million times, but yeah, I know the time you're speaking of. Yeah, man, that was my first club headline weekend ever. Was it a small? Wait a minute, no, it wasn't. That was at. It was at my second, I guess, club headline weekend. I don't know. It was in Indianapolis though, and we ended up going to like a party after the shows with the bartender at the club, and we're leaving, getting ready to leave, waiting for the taxi or the I don't even know if Uber was a thing then, and I had to pee something fierce, so we were in like a residential area, like a cul-de-sac. But I was moving gravel with that stream.
I
I was a much healthier man.
have Chris Weir coming on in just a few weeks, so I'm
Good
gonna
guy.
have to get his version of that story. But yeah,
He's one of the best, man.
that's awesome. So, actually, speaking of him for just a moment, in doing research for him, I found a shower gun. Was that you?
Yeah, yeah, that's me.
There's like a split second. Absolutely, there's a split second of your face with the knife.
Yeah, I had long hair then and a big old beard.
Yep. A look I am on my way to.
There you go.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're having half as much fun listening to this podcast as I had making it. That wraps up the getting to know you portion of the podcast. And before we start talking comedy, I want to remind everyone to go check out 4x3. They drop awesome original comedy content every week on their YouTube channel, youtube.com/@FOURXTHREE. Or you can find it by looking up 4x3 on YouTube. Let's get back to the show. All right. So at this point, those are all kind of the specific researched questions I have. This is the point at which I'm just going to ask boilerplate questions I would ask to any comedian to try and get an idea of what pushed you into comedy.
Sure.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid?
You go through phases as a kid, right? want to be everything. I think I wanted to be a firefighter, and I wanted to be a doctor, and I think mostly I just wanted to be a pro wrestler. But of course, I didn't do anything that would push me in that direction. No training, nothing like that. I certainly didn't exercise or lift weights or anything like that.
We had very similar athletic careers. I was
Yeah.
also the friend in the back, uh, wandering around.
I mean, I played sports and everything. It wasn't something that was going to get me to, elite physical specimen. And I'm a short guy too. I'm not going to be a big, tall champion of professional wrestling.
Yeah. So, when did you decide you were going to try stand up?
Well, I had talked about it for some time. And it's one of those things you always think about, I guess, but I really didn't know where to start, how to start. Um, and I remember I had talked about it because I'd go to like family parties and shit like that, or any party anywhere, and you kind of hold court, making everybody laugh and shit, telling stories. Um, I think my last year of being married, my ex wife gave me a notebook to write things down. I thought, okay, something funny. If I think of something funny, I'll write it down. If I get some stuff, maybe I'll go do one of these open mics I hear so much about. Never cracked the book at all. Never opened it. And then when she and I split up, um, I thought, what the hell? Why not? So I just went. I was actually visiting a buddy of mine out in. He lived out in L.A. So I did my first open mic ever in Hollywood.
Oh wow.
I can't remember where. I mean, it wasn't at a club. It was at no place that anyone would know. It was not a good not a good set of any kind. But got me up there. Had a good time doing it.
Did you feel like at that, like, you just knew at that point you wanted to do it again, or did it take you a while to come back to it?
I knew I wanted to do it again. Of course, I didn't know when that would be. Came back to Cincinnati, and I was going through my divorce, and then my grandmother passed away, and it was just like, well, I got to do it again. And just at that point, I'm just signing up for the Go Bananas open mic. But that you really only get on once every 3 or 4 weeks, and you got to bring people out to do that. And then you started learning about where all the other open mics are. I mean, it's a lot different now than it was when I started. Social media is in a different place now than it was then. So there's a lot more information out for you just to go find. Then you kind of had to like do it and then talk to other people. Where else is this going on at? And then you learn how to use social media as a tool for all of that. Um, but yeah, that's
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you remember the first joke you wrote?
no, I don't. And if I don't think it was even a joke. Probably, I think I just told a story about. Yeah, I think I imagine. I think I just told a story about when I was married. Having like I was man. I don't know this guy. I was jerking off and my friends walked in on me in my condo, and I just told that story, which I wish I hadn't at this point.
Yeah, I certainly have some stories that I feel like if trying to write material continued to fail. At this point, I've actually written maybe 6 or 7 minutes. I've only been trying for a couple of months, um, but yeah, I have some stories that I'm like, worst comes to worst, if no one's laughing, I could just tell this story and probably at least get a laugh.
Yeah, no, you just got to figure out how to tell the story, right? So you got to get because most people want to, and I did too. Most people want to like put all these details into the story, so you paint this picture, but that's not what you need to do. What you need to do is get right to the funny thing, and then you figure out how to tell that story in a way where there's funnier pops in there. You dress it up a little bit. Maybe you change a couple of things. Who gives a shit? It's your time up there. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes when it comes to comedy is "Never let the truth get in the way of a good story."
That's a good one. That is a good one. I mean, a lot of it starts from truth, or maybe, at least in my case, starts from a real place or a real experience. But then Go wherever the funny is.
Absolutely. Like just because a scenario didn't pan out in the funniest way possible doesn't mean you can't use that as inspiration.
Absolutely. Absolutely right.
So when did you know you were good at stand up?
Um, well, I mean, again, you got to have a certain level of naivete to keep you going, keep you working at it. I don't know. I think probably before I was actually good at it. You know what I mean? You convince yourself that you're good and it's worth your time. You got to. I mean, I very few times where other people are going to prop you up like that and keep you going. So you really got to do that yourself. I mean, I could definitely see that I was getting laughs in a way that other contemporaries of mine were not getting. Either the number of laughs or the effect of which that laugh had. Like, are you getting just chuckles, or are you getting big goddamn belly laughs that people are not going to forget? And those are the ones you want. Those are the ones I want.
Absolutely. Those are the ones that make people talk about you.
Exactly right.
So if you could give, or actually rather, what advice would you give to someone about to do their first open mic?
Don't run the light. That's it. Don't go over your time. That's the first lesson I learned, and I think it's the first lesson everybody should be taught. Time is money up there, and everybody's time is everybody's time. Don't fucking ruin the show because you had to get your last thought out. I mean, just be done.
Yeah, that can add up fast, especially if you're doing, 10, 12, 5 minute sets in an hour.
Yeah. Well, also, yeah. Also, I'm a little bit cautious to give out advice. What the fuck do I know? I'm not on TV. I'm not a household name. What I'm doing right now isn't correct. It's just correct for me right now. That's all I can really say about that. Which is probably giving myself a little bit of a hall pass for not doing the work I should be doing. But I'm hesitant to give anyone advice. So if someone's starting out, don't run the light. That's as simple as it can be. Everything else you're gonna probably have to figure out for yourself. I was someone who was uh, I listened, I took advice, but you consider the source as well. Yeah, I'll let you say what you want to say, Tammy, but I don't know. There's certain people's advice I definitely would take, some that I wouldn't probably. But I mean, I'll listen to everybody. I can decide whether or not that advice is worth a damn to me or not. But
On that note, do you have like a specific piece of advice you received from another comedian that you consider to be really valuable?
don't run the light. I have, of course. You do this long enough, you're always going to have people who you consider mentors that have come before you, people who you kind of watch. I've received advice on how to maintain yourself as a comic, how to carry yourself, how to act in the club when you're not on stage. That's just as important. How to be around other comics, how to be out of the way of the people who are serving people, trying to run the show. Um, I don't know if there's anything that like sticks out necessarily because it's just I'm a sponge in this thing. I take in and I keep what I want and I get rid of what because I can only got so much capacity for it as well. But I don't. It just becomes part of the makeup of how I move throughout this thing. If that makes any sense at all, I don't know if it really does. It's just that I don't really know if I. It's just all part of the internal makeup now of me.
Yeah, and I've been looking and listening to a lot of podcasts and listening to how comedians talk about other comedians, and I keep coming back to this question of: do you think comedy is more of a community or a competition?
Man, it depends on who you ask and when you ask them. I think honestly, Um, it's absolutely a community. There's no denying that. But it's also absolutely a competition. More of which I think that's dependent upon the person that you're asking. Well, how do they feel that day? That's really it. There's days when I'm like, there's been days where I've been so proud to be a member of this community, but then there's also days where it's like, shit, I don't think I'll ever get these opportunities I'm seeing, and that's just, I guess, with anything. It also just makes you sound like a negative dick. Um, I mean, I guess that's the best advice I could tell anyone is, watch what other people do, watch what works, watch what doesn't work, but watch, observe, be a student, and above all, man, be someone that people want to be around. Be a good person. I mean, there's this thing is ego driven. Just try not to let your ego get the best of you. And listen, I gotta tell myself that shit every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's to an extent it's the same in any profession, really. There's going to be egos. People are ahead of you, people are behind you. You want to
Right?
learn from the people ahead of you, and you want to feel like you're at least trying to give back to those people behind you in some way.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, how often do you perform?
As often as possible. I mean, before the pandemic, before all that, I would think I was probably between 5 and 7 nights a week. I was doing a show. My calendar was very full. Uh, I was in demand. Pandemic changed a lot of things. A lot of new comics since then. How that's several years. So you got a lot of new comics. Then you got different levels of ambition, different levels of, oh yeah, I've been doing this a year. I need to get a videotape of myself so I can send it out to every comedy club around here. Which is like, that doesn't seem like to me like you're ready. But who the fuck am I to say that? Like I said that, and some of those very people are going to get opportunities at these clubs that I'm not, because I'm not hitting them up, because I didn't do that, and that's my fault. So I could tell you, I could be that guy, and I got no one to blame for my calendar being empty but myself. That is a fact. I still get up between 3 and 4, 5 times a week if I can, but it's less now. I've got in that time. My job got a little more intense at work. I got a relation. I'm in a relationship with someone now, and that's a demanding part of your time as well. And she has 2 kids, so there's gonna be those times where I gotta, you gotta keep all these plants fed and watered, right? So I gotta be there for everything. But it's just like I was saying before, if you're not singularly focused, whatever you're putting all your attention to, that's where it all goes. So if I've got, three different silos of things that I gotta give all my time and attention to, they're all individually going to be smaller than they would be if I was getting all my time to that. So I'm doing what I got to do to build a good relationship. So hopefully I can get right back to doing all the stand up all the time. I mean, it is a time. It is something that takes you away from your family if you've got one. It just does. A lot of times people get into stand up later in life, and at that point, the family's like, "Please go, get out of the fucking house." You know what I mean? So, but this is a different situation. So I try and be available. I honestly don't think I'm giving my time enough to any of the three things. So, who knows?
I think the modern landscape of performance and creativity has just changed what like how you can become creative, make stuff. My dad, for example, is 66 right now, and he's a musician. We have a bunch of guitars.
Mhm.
Like he's always played, and very much had to step away from that when my brothers and I were born.
Of
Still
course.
always, still always played music. Always recorded, and he had bands, but he had to have a job. He had 3 kids,
Of
so he
course.
needed to make sure that came first. Now that he's
Yeah.
retired, he actually down in Cincinnati, there's a project called the King Records Project.
Yeah.
It's called the For the Love of King.
Yeah.
And so Bootsy Collins
Yeah.
got some people together and they bought King's Records, which is where
Yep.
James Brown recorded. And all of a sudden, my 65 or 64 at the time year old dad was recording an album with Bootsy Collins, and like the band War reached out, like saw him do that, and
Right.
they
So
decided to, yeah,
exactly.
it's
Like that's if that doesn't keep you hungry or keep you at least like there's no reason to give up on this shit. Okay, maybe like I was on a rocket ship to the moon, right? And then you start playing out, and then maybe you start to lose a little ground. That doesn't mean you just throw the shit away. And I've seen so many fucking people do that over the years that were genuinely funny and just stop. Listen, for whatever reason, and if you're not fully into this, by all means, give yourself the break because this shit is hard on you. It just is. But man, yeah, that's if you don't have the time to give to it, you're not going to get any better. I guess is what. Like I said, I mean, my calendar is not what it used to be, and I've got no one to blame but myself. Now, does that mean I quit? No, but if I get to rededicate myself back to that with the time and effort that what I was using before, it's not like I'm not funny. It's not like I don't have the act I already had. Maybe I'm not producing jokes the same way I was at some point, but that doesn't mean that I'm not still producing content.
absolutely. What's your favorite venue you've ever performed in?
There's been plenty. I don't think that and I'll ever really be able to top Go Bananas, just for what it means in my heart. I mean, I'm also I love the Liberty Funny Bone as well. Um, these are the clubs that are around here. I've done other. I mean, Helium in Indianapolis is a phenomenal club as well. Um, I did a venue in my hometown. I did this old vaudeville theater. This was the U.S. Grant Theater in Georgetown, Ohio. I think we had something like 250 or 300 people in there for me when I headlined it. That was special. Be at home and in a theater that I performed in as a kid. So that was really special. But honestly, man, it's gonna be Go Bananas for me. That's the first place I ever hosted. The first that gave me work. It's where I found my home. Really, I mean, I got a fucking banana tattooed on my arm, man. I mean,
That's amazing.
that's home base.
It seems like to Cincinnati comedians, Go Bananas is the gold standard for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's where you can kind of learn how to do it. The Funny Bone is a little bit different. Funny Bone is a much bigger club, and you need to be a prepared comic to go in there and work that room because you walk out on that stage, it's something like 300 some odd, 350 people, something like that. It's a lot. They got a balcony. If that thing's full, and it's a big open room, you know what I mean? So if you're up there, eating shit, it's going to be visible. Go Banana is a much smaller room. Feels like a dank basement. So like a small ceiling, short ceiling. So all that energy bounces off the ceilings, comes back to you. I mean, it is as close to what you would imagine a New York comedy club to be, and that's kind of what everybody's perception of where stand-up comedy originated.
How do you come up with your material, and how often do you change it up?
Well, I mean, honestly, I very rarely write jokes in the sense that what other people do. I typically tell stories. That's really it. Most everything that I say on stage is telling a story about an experience I had. That's 99% of what I do. So it's go out and live a life with people who inspire you, um, and just kind of pay attention. See what's peculiar. I mean, we typically see the world a little bit differently than other people because we're looking for the hypocrisies and the ironic situations and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. One of my questions that I had you kind of just answered is like, do you feel it's more important to be a writer or a listener? But it sounds like and to me as well, it can be more important to listen for the funny moments in the world and take inspiration from that.
You still got to be a writer to be able to say it out in a way that people can get it in the audience. So but I always hear at bars, people hear I'm a stand-up comic. Man, I'm funny, but I'm funny in a situation. I could go up there and just talk. If someone said something to me, it's like, first of all, that's horseshit. Just let me just tell you, first of all, no, you couldn't. Okay, because that is a
No.
hell of a lot harder than you think it is. And if you think that you're funny in these situations, and what you got to do is write an act that creates that situation. What I always say is that stand-up comedy is in my mind is best when it's like a two-way conversation where it just hasn't been your opportunity to speak yet. You feel engaged. You're a part of this conversation with the comic, but it feels very much conversative. That's what works best for me. That's what I prefer. What I like. Um, that's not everybody. There's absurd styles. There's deadpan. There's all kinds of different stuff. That's what I like. It feels like a two-way conversation where it just hasn't been my turn to talk yet. If I'm in the audience.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of stand up I've really grasped to throughout my life. The kinds of comedians who you really do kind of feel like you're a part of it, even though you haven't, you're an audience member. You're sitting
Right.
at home maybe watching it, but
And that's exactly it. I'm telling stories. I'm really opening up quite a bit, and it is a conversation. But yeah, not your turn to talk just yet.
yeah. So outside of stand up, do you feel you're funnier naturally or when you're trying?
I don't really know how to answer that because I feel like I'm always trying to be funny. You know what I
I get
mean?
that.
Like if there's a situation and there's a funny thing to be said or to be pointed out, I'm probably gonna say it or do it, and regardless of what the consequences might be, I'm probably gonna do it.
I've noticed since I started writing my set, a lot of those internal thoughts that I would have otherwise just been like, that's for me, I've started to say out loud
Yeah,
because, your friends and your family, that's kind of your best
yeah,
easy waters to test things in.
yeah. You're not gonna lose them.
Yeah, absolutely. They could be mad at you, but they're not going to oust you from their life or boo you.
Precisely. Right. Exactly.
All right, so we're about wrapping up here. Just a few more questions. What do you love about comedy?
Well, I love making people laugh. But I also love to laugh. So that's the business I want to be in, man. I don't know how much I love making it a business necessarily. Um, Anytime you do that, you make it work, and work is still work. Even if what's the pie in the sky dream? You're touring all over the country or all over the world, maybe. That sounds. As amazing as all that sounds. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to travel all the time like that and be away from everything. I don't know, man. I I love making people laugh. That's really what it boils down to. But like I said, if it's a job, everybody has days they don't want to go to work. I guess is what I was boiling that down to.
My grandpa has a famous quote within our family, which is that prostitutes and comedians have the hardest job for the same reason, which is that even on days where you don't feel good, you have to go make everyone else feel good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I like that one.
So, is there anything you kind of touched on it a little bit with comedy becoming a business, but is there anything you hate about comedy?
um, yeah, there are. You know, it's the way that sometimes it can make you view yourself because of the competitive nature. I think that's a trick that our own mind plays on us. But that part of it sucks. You know, when you should be happy for your friends because of the stuff that they're getting, you're pissed off because you're not getting that stuff. I hate that. Um, but it's something you gotta force yourself out of. And it's gotten easier because I mean I'd much rather be happy for my friends than pissed off about anything. So it's just that's I think the part that I dislike about it is just kind of just what it can make you do to yourself, your view of yourself, good or bad. You know, you feel like you're on top of the world because you had a good set. You start treating people like shit, perhaps.
Yeah, I get that. If you were to teach a comedy workshop, what would be your primary focus?
You want me to say don't run the light here? I honestly, I'd never, I can't say I'd ever really teach a comedy class. I don't know, workshop. I don't view myself as a teacher in that regard. I still see myself very much as a student. So I not that I don't feel that I could have things to offer in certain situations. I don't know that I could ever. I mean, I honestly, I think the only thing that I would really hound on is don't run the light. That's really the only thing I know that I can pass on to someone, and I know that that's absolutely true. Don't run the damn light.
I think that's a super healthy mentality. It's knowing that you're kind of always a student and anything that you're trying to get better at, you got to keep being a student.
Exactly.
All right, Chris. Well, my final question for you today, if you could have any job in comedy, what would it be?
It's headliner, obviously, right? I want to be a club headliner, or a theater headliner, or whatever. I want to do all that. I want to do all those tours. I want to do every bit of that. No, and if I sound like I'm bitching because it sounds like it could be a time. I want to do all of it. You know what I mean? So the job I want in comedy is headliner. Um,
That's awesome.
Certainly would love to do like acting roles and shit like that. But listen, I'm 40 fucking years old. I don't have a whole lot more chapters left in this life. This is what I'm going to do now for the bulk of my life. So I wish I'd have started earlier. Hell, I wish I'd have started when I was 20, but I was 30. I was turning 30, going through a divorce. At least I had a little bit of something to talk about, right? But at this point, this is what I do. I do stand up. I don't have any real experience in acting and all that stuff. Could get there, sure, like anyone else, but stand up, man, that's the one that I know I do well at, and at least better at that than anything else I do.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, I think you're on your way.
Thanks, sir.
If you want to take a second and just talk to the camera, tell us what you got going on, anything you want to promote, if you want to promote anything.
Oh man, I mean, it's just I would say because I'm going to be at Wiley's this weekend. I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's certainly not going to come out tomorrow when I go to when I'm on
That's
the
fair.
show. So I'm headlining at
This will be
Wiley's.
coming out mid-May,
Okay, cool.
a couple of weeks from now.
I would just say whoever's watching this, go see a show. Go watch a stand-up comedy show. Pay the ticket price. And I mean, and I also mean, go see a local show. The Don't Tell comedy shows are very good. Those are up and coming folks. But just going to see the big name that you see in the movies or something like that, that's great. Continue to do that. But go see a local show with people who are trying to figure out their voice and support this thing because it needs it.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here, Chris.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.